The 401k is an unbelievable tool available to most working individuals out there, and yet it can be, even though it's an amazing tool, it could be something that's potentially costing you, and you likely have the ability to change that, and that's what we want to talk about today.
Well, I mean, let's talk about why are these so powerful. First of all, we know, even from our own millionaire studies that we've done, this is the first account that most millionaires cross into seven figures with. And there's a lot going for it. If you think about, there's lots of tax incentives. You think about free money from your employer, the fact that you're getting profit sharing. There's a lot of things to get really excited about a 401k. So we want to make sure that you're doing it right.
But not all 401ks and 401k plans are created equal. There's actually a study done by the Department of Labor that found that of 1,000 of the largest 401k plans out there, over half of those plans had funds that shared revenue with the plan's administrator, meaning that there was some sort of kickback, some sort of payment for the funds and the other investment options that were found in the plan. And so you may be wondering, well, is that for sure a bad thing? Well, not necessarily in every circumstance, but can it be a bad thing? And can it be an expensive thing? And can it be a costly thing? Absolutely.
Well, I mean, let's talk about what does this mean when we find out that there's extra fees in there. We've seen this in several different ways. I remember when we've gone and reviewed 401k plans, you see sub-account fees. Even what's amazing, usually this is an active account. You know, if you find out there's a money manager or there's something, but I've even been surprised that they have realized that a lot of investors want index funds.
That's right.
So you even have to pay attention to the way the index fund of your 401k is structured to make sure you're truly getting the low-cost variety. Because we even found there was a plan. I'm not going to say too many names, but there was a plan that was labeled as a Vanguard S&P 500. And then when we looked at the internal expenses, we looked at all the fine print, we found out that this thing had an internal expense ratio that was over 0.5%.
That's right.
When we know that the traditional Vanguard S&P 500 is less than 10 basis points. So you got to pay attention to this because it could cost you a lot of money in the long term.
Yeah, so you may see an expense ratio inside of a fund, and that expense ratio may be paid as a kickback back to the plan provider. So it's something that you want to make aware of, because even though this is a hidden fee, it can really affect how many dollars stay in your back pocket. And there were some other really interesting findings in this study that was done by the Department of Labor. The average 401k of these 1,000 largest plans they looked at offered about 22 different investment options.
That's a lot.
It's a lot. It's not insane, though. It's not hundreds. But about 40% of those available investments were affiliated with a 401k provider. Again, this is not inherently a bad thing. You're probably thinking, oh, I've got a Fidelity 401k, I've got Fidelity funds. I've got a Vanguard 401k, I've got Vanguard funds. But oftentimes, when it's associated with the provider, when you see the same fund family there's a really good chance that those are not the best funds available. Those are not the lowest cost funds available. And oftentimes, those are not the best performing funds available either.
I think it's just it requires an extra step. When I see proprietary funds, and like I said, you said a good one. Like if you think about the S&P 500 at Fidelity, that's going to be low cost.
The lowest cost.
And that would probably fall into this 40%. And that doesn't necessarily mean it's bad, but it does mean you at least need to go follow all the asterisks, all whatever markings they put next to the internal expenses, so that you can figure out what are the fees and what are you paying. Because we just want to make sure you're not paying those proprietary fees on funds that are just, it's not necessarily in your best interest. And there's also, be careful of the active managers that are essentially closeted index funds, but they're just way more expensive.
Yeah, let's look at an example. And that's the closeted index fund is a great example. A fund that is doing the same thing as indexes, but charging a whole lot different. Let's think about two investors or two funds available inside of your plan. Let's say that one has a revenue share and the other's non-revenue sharing, just a low-cost index. And let's say that both of these funds aim or goal is to track the S&P 500. The S&P 500 return is 10%. Well, when you actually look at the underlying internal expense ratio, the fund that has a revenue share arrangement in place might have an expense ratio of like 0.67%, where the actual indexed non-revenue sharing version could be as low as 0.015%. So a fraction of a percentage point is what you're paying in a fee. Well, when you think about it, if the broad index itself is returning 10, the actual return that you receive via the non-revenue sharing index could be something like 9.985 versus the revenue sharing fund, which is like 9.33%. And even though these are the exact same funds tracking the exact same index with the exact same type of exposure, the results that you get as an investor are not the same. When you think about how meaningful could that difference be over the course of an entire working career, it could be substantial. It could be in the hundreds of thousands of dollars category.
Wow. I mean, that's why, look, pay attention to what you're paying and make sure you're getting value out of it. That's the thing. We don't like it when there's fees that don't technically add any value to what you're getting. If there's a much better index fund, get the lowest cost version of itself. Price is what you pay, value is what you receive, and we just want to make sure that those things are connected.
So what are some things that you can do? What are some key takeaways? And a lot of people don't realize this, that you actually have the power to be an advocate for your plan. So make sure you're asking the right questions. A lot of times, we've actually had this happen where a big fan of the show reached out and said, guys, my 401k is just not great. It's a provider, and I won't say the name of the company, but it's
sub-account fees.
Their sub-account fees, and it's very expensive, and the employer match is not great, and it's
they
real
restrict who
clunky.
can fund it, because it's old school.
And so we said, hey, why don't you ask your HR department these questions? Hey, why don't we have any low-cost indices? Hey, why don't we think about a safe harbor plan? And we gave them basically these list of questions to ask. Well, they took it to the HR department, and they said, sorry, honestly, we set this up 10 years ago, and we haven't looked at it. It's been on someone's desk. Where did you get this information? How do we improve? And we were actually able to come in and improve the plan, actually put in a low-cost safe harbor type plan. So if you can ask the right questions, even if you can't change the provider, even if you can't change the custodian, you might be able to say, hey, can we just make some low-cost index funds available? Rather than just having all these active funds, can we get an S&P 500? Can we get an international index? Can we get a small cap index? And you might be amazed that having those changes take place in your plan is not as difficult as you might think.
Yeah, and you just hit on all the reasons on why you need to know your investment options in the plan. And look, it's on the responsibility list of being a fiduciary provider of a retirement plan for many employees, that they should be paying attention to how good these investment options are.
Right.
So empower yourself, empower your fellow employees. Do it in a tactful way, because nobody likes, an employer doesn't want an employee that's out there just causing trouble for the sake of trouble. But if you truly can make things better for your coworkers and for yourself, let's go advocate for this.
Well, what you're doing there is you're creating a win-win. If you can create the scenario where you say, hey, not only will this plan be better for me and I'll get lower cost options, but man, it's going to save you as the employer in terms of administration costs. And it's going to be better for the coworkers. If we have a safe harbor plan, then maybe the ownership is going to be able to put more money in without having to worry about failing testing. There are ways that you can structure the conversation, again, to be an advocate for yourself, because the 401k is an incredible account. It's an incredible tool. And if you're going to work in an employer, you want to make sure you have the best 401k possible, the best 401k available.
And look, we already said, majority of plans, 22 funds, they add a lot of complexity. The win is typically keep it simple.
That's right.
If you know what you can control, get out there and maximize those things, and then set it, forget it, make it automatic for the people. That's how you win the 401k game.